So there is a video that has gone viral, and it basically shows a little girl. She's only 8 years old, and she's in a department store with her, presumably her mother, because you can hear a woman's voice in the background. And basically, she's having a little rant about the fact that the store is displaying girls' clothes and boys' clothes in different sections. So the girls' clothes are sort of pink, white colours. They have captions like not captions, I should say, stitching in them like pretty, that sort of thing. And the boys' clothes have things like hero and adventurous, etc. And this has went viral, and some of those posting are saying things like this little girl just calls out gendered clothing. Um, so basically, this is being held up as a sort of cause celebre by progressives and feminists and so on. So this is my thoughts on it. Firstly, there was actually another viral video involving another little girl, also in the UK in Coventry, um, kind of lecturing Theresa May about homelessness. That's an important issue, and I think it is important that like the children, learn compassion. But I've always been wary about children ostensibly being coerced by adults. Now, in neither case can I say for certainty that they have been coerced, but I think it's quite plausible. That's not to say that children aren't capable of being witty and thinking for themselves, because, I mean, I've got a 4-year-old niece and she's very smart for her age, so it's not implausible that children can think for themselves, but nor is it implausible that there is a certain degree of adult coercion. There are people out there who think that sort of coercing their children in a certain way to push their own agenda is cute. And it's a way of pushing an agenda. There's very few people are going to attack a child. So it's almost a cheating way to push forward an agenda. Um, so that's just a sort of disclaimer I'd like to make. I'm well aware that children can think for themselves, but I think it's also plausible that there has been adults interference here, sort of coercing the little girl what to say. But there's a few fundamental things to discuss here. Firstly, is this notion that it's some sort of great hardship. I think having the girls section and the boys section is, among many reasons, it's for consistency because that's always been the way, but it's also for tidiness. If, as the little girl suggested, it's all muddled up, all the boys and the girls stuffed together, it would look a bit untidy. So I think that's one reason. They put it all together. Also, the average boy is going to be a different size than the average girl. So again, having different sections, I presume, would be for that reason. But I really want to take on this notion that there's such a thing as social gender construct in the way that progressives and feminists insist it is overbearing. I'm not going to say that there is no such thing as a social gender construct, but I think the exaggerating the influence that it has. In the end of the day, the department store is not forcing the little girl or her family to buy anything. So if she wants to buy boys' clothes, let's say adventurous and hero and so on, the store isn't going to stop her doing that. So I really think this is a case of a mountain being made out of a molehill. I mean, she goes on ranting about this for about 8 minutes. I really don't think that it is that big a deal. Um, the fact is, it's always been that way. Now, say what you want about that, but that's the way it is. And when progressives insist that there's this big overbearing social construct that kind of imposes on people what they should be, in some ways they're actually doing the same thing, because if a designer does design clothes for little girls that are pink or whatever and girly, then he or she is going to be criticized. So there's actually an intolerance from the progressive side, um, of disrespecting other people's idea of what masculinity or femininity is. In the end of the day, unless the department store is forcing the family to do anything, I really think it's a non-issue. Um, this also applies to toys. In the end of the day, a lot of little boys like to play with toy cars and toy soldiers and so on. A lot of little girls like to play with dolls. That's not sexism. That's just reality. Um, if I had, I'm not a parent, but if I had a daughter, would I let her play with boys' toys if she wanted to? Yeah, I would. I'd be a little surprised, but I certainly wouldn't stop her. And vice versa, if I had a little boy who wanted to play with dolls, am I going to stop him? Am I going to be a really sort of overbearing father? Oh, you must be a boy. No, I'm not going to do that. Because as a loving parent, I would want my children to be happy. But by the same token, I'm not going to pander to this politically correct idea that there's some sort of social gender construct. That's nonsense. That's total nonsense. It's the same people who basically say that the notion of a traditional family is some sort of terrible thing. Um, because unless you attack that, then you're not being LGBT friendly. I think that's nonsense. I think it's perfectly compatible to be both. I think it's perfectly compatible to be tolerant towards LGBT people, while saying traditionally there is a family that is one man, one woman, and children. And that's, I'm not all conservative in this. I really don't care. In fact, personally, I'm 31, I'm not married. So I'm not, I think that's very much an individual endeavour. But the point I'm making is progressives talk a lot about, um, others imposing things on them, but actually they're pretty judgmental themselves. And they're pretty, yeah, they're pretty judgmental themselves because unless the world fits into their little politically correct box, then it's some sort of great conspiracy to coerce children into being masculine and feminine. Who is really doing the coercing here? Because I think in many cases, progressive, so called progressive parents are actually pandering to their children what they want to see the world as. I think in some cases you would have progressive parents who, if their little boy was masculine, they would try and veer him away from it. And and basically, and this is not to go too much off topic, but it is related to the concept of childhood innocence. I feel really uncertain, and frankly, I disagree with this idea of transgender children. And I know I'm going to get in hot water for that, but frankly, I couldn't care less. At some point, there has to be common sense overriding political correctness. And I just think the concept of transgender children is absurd. I take the view that adults should be allowed to do whatever they want with their own body, even if they are mentally ill. And I still believe, there's a lot of debate around the subject of transgenderism, but adults are adults. With children, children are still developing their identity. And I'm not going to stick too long on this because it is going a bit off topic, but in the end of the day, children are children. And yes, you get smart children. Yes, you get children who think for themselves in a certain way. But even smart children are still developing their maturity. They're still developing their brain. This is just a scientific fact. So I really don't think adults should be pandering to that. Like I say, if I had children, if I had a little boy who wanted to play with dolls, I'm not going to make a big issue out of it. If I had a little girl who wanted to play with, I don't know, race cars, I'm not going to make a big issue out of it. And that's totally the whole concept of human freedom is following your own endeavors. That's fine. I get that. I just don't think. I think there's hypocrisy on the part of progressives when they kind of lecture department stores and they expect the entire department store to change for them. Um, I think the majority of parents couldn't care less. Um, and it's just, when I buy presents for my niece and nephew, I I get them what I think they would be interested in. It just so happens my niece is into anything to do with princesses and Barbies and that sort of thing. And that hasn't been coerced by her parents. That's just what she likes. My little nephew is 3 years old. He's into cars. Okay, there's no coercion from adults. It's this idea that children at that age are being molded by adults is nonsense. But when progressives are clearly putting their politics into a child's mind, then they are being coerced. So let me know your thoughts. Basically, what I'm advocating here is actually the liberal approach. Live and let live. It seems to me it's progressives who are not advocating that approach. They're the ones who want to judge and lecture and say, oh, this is some big conspiracy. It's a department store trying to enforce this on the children. And no, they're not. They're only doing what's been done for decades, and it's harmless. You know, in the end of the day, if your little boy or little girl, if the little girl likes adventurous clothes, buy it for her. The department store isn't going to turn around and say, no, you can't have those. So really, this is, I think it's being exaggerated. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching.